the most dangerous gang in Britain. The story of the Kray Twins. Picture London in the middle of the last century. By day, it's an ordinary European city. People rushing to work, shops opening, the famous red buses running along the streets. But when the sun dips below the horizon, some areas of the city change beyond recognition. In the dark alleyways, a very different law prevails. Here, power belongs not to the police, but to criminals. Pub and restaurant owners hand over money every week to unknown men. Businessmen try not to ask too many questions. Witnesses to crimes prefer to stay silent. Everyone knows, if you cross the wrong people, you could lose not just your business, but your life. At the head of this criminal empire stood two twin brothers, Ronnie and Reggie Kray. Their surname struck fear across Britain for decades. They managed to turn an ordinary street gang into one of the most influential criminal organizations in the country. The Kray Twins were born in 1933 in the impoverished East End of London. After the Second World War, this area was considered one of the most deprived. Bombed-out houses, unemployment, poverty, and high crime rates had become a familiar part of everyday life for local residents. From early childhood, the brothers stood out among their peers. They took up boxing, were physically strong, and never shied away from fights. On the streets of the East End, respect was won not by the smartest, but by the toughest. It was there that their characters were forged. At first, their crimes were relatively minor: brawls, thefts, and extortion. But very quickly, the brothers realized that real money came not from petty crime, but from controlling other people's businesses. And so their gang, called the Firm, was born. Gradually, dozens of young men began to join them. Everyone understood. Joining the group meant money, protection, and a high status in the criminal underworld. But leaving the gang was practically impossible. Nightclubs, bars, and casinos became their main source of income. Establishment owners were offered a simple deal: pay for protection. If a person agreed, his business continued to operate peacefully. If he refused, trouble began. Smashed windows, fires, beatings, and constant threats quickly convinced even the most stubborn entrepreneurs. Ronnie Kray was considered especially dangerous. He was an extremely unpredictable man. According to those who knew him, he could be chatting amiably with someone one moment and fly into a rage over a casual remark the next. Many were afraid even to look him in the eye. Reggie, by contrast, seemed calmer. He tended to handle financial matters, the organization of the gang, and negotiations. If Ronnie inspired fear through his brutality, Reggie built the criminal empire like a real business. Over time, the brothers' influence became enormous. Their clubs were visited by famous actors, singers, sportsmen, and even politicians. For many, having a photograph taken with the Kray Twins seemed like a mark of high status. Yet not everyone understood that behind the expensive suits and lavish parties lay a world of violence. The gang was involved not only in extortion. Its members were implicated in assaults, kidnappings, and murders. Anyone who posed a threat to the brothers could vanish without a trace. The criminal's most terrifying weapon was not even a gun, but fear. People were afraid to go to the police. Witnesses changed their statements or simply disappeared. Many were convinced that the brothers had connections almost everywhere. For several years, the police could not gather enough evidence. Every investigation ran into a dead end because no one wanted to testify against the gang. But over time, the situation began to change. After several high-profile murders, a special team of detectives was formed to focus exclusively on the Kray case. Investigators spent months gathering information, tracking down witnesses, and checking every detail. The work went on for years. Gradually, fear began to give way to a desire for justice. Some former associates decided to cooperate with the prosecution, realizing that the brothers' empire was already starting to crumble. In 1968, the police struck the decisive blow. Ronnie and Reggie Kray were arrested. The trial attracted enormous attention from the British press. Newspapers published new details of the crimes every day, and for the first time, the public saw the full scale of the gang's activities. The court found the brothers guilty of murder and other serious offenses. Both received life sentences. For many Londoners, this became a symbol that even the most powerful criminals must one day answer to the law. Yet the story did not end there. Over the years, a veritable cult grew up around the Kray Twins. Books were written about them, documentaries, and feature films were made. Some people began to see them as charismatic gangsters, forgetting that behind their fame lay dozens of ruined lives, constant fear, and human tragedies. In reality, the Krays' lives bore little resemblance to a glamorous crime film. Their power rested solely on violence, threats, and murder. They built an empire on fear, but in the end, it was fear that destroyed them. When people stopped keeping quiet, the entire system began to collapse with startling speed. Today, the story of the Kray twins remains one of the most famous chapters in British criminal history. It shows just how dangerous organized crime can become when society is too afraid to stand up to it. But it also reminds us that even the most powerful criminal organizations do not last forever. Behind the big names, the lavish lifestyles, and the legends, there always lies one simple truth. The criminal path almost never ends in wealth and glory. More often than not, it ends in a prison cell, loneliness, and broken lives. That is how the story of one of Britain's most notorious gangs came to an end. A story that is still remembered to this day.